one of the favorite generals of the Russian army, has lost his life as a result of a critical operation of the Ukrainian army. The successive decapitation of many Russian generals in the recent period, when the balances in the war have completely shifted in favor of Ukraine, has led to a huge loss of motivation in the army. However, the allegation that Putin was involved in the loss of the lives of these generals has caused a huge echo all over the world. Putin, who has been betrayed by many names close to him one after the other, has started to eliminate everyone he considers a threat. These evil moves of Putin's were the last straw for the Russian army. Putin, who is quite afraid of completely losing his throne in a possible coup attempt that will start in Russia, is completely cornered. The Russian army, which began to be largely repulsed from Ukrainian territory in the last months of the Russo-Ukrainian War, began to suffer very large casualties during the problems caused by management. During this period, when more than 250,000 Russian soldiers lost their lives, Putin dragged both domestic politics and the army into a very big crisis, with his impulsive decisions without accepting any responsibility, which made some Russian generals very uncomfortable. This situation led to the formation of mutinous groups within the Russian army. The Russian army, which was considered one of the largest world-class military forces before the war, has suffered a huge loss of power due to Putin's mismanagement. Russian generals, who thought that if the war continued, there would be no trace of the decrepit strength of the Russian army, came together to stop this bad course. This meeting, which was attended by senior Russian generals, was also attended by former generals who were expelled from the army by order of Putin himself, considering that he was prone to rebellion. The secret meeting of these Russian generals, who think that peace negotiations with Ukraine should be launched as soon as possible, was detected by the Russian intelligence service. Fearing that the Russian army would attempt a new coup in the continuation of this process, Putin became mad with anger. According to reports submitted by the head of the Russian intelligence service, Sergei Narishkin, retired Major General Kanamat Botashev, one of the favorite commanders of the Russian army, was one of the names who attended the secret meeting organized by Russian generals. Only a few days after these developments, Putin's sudden decision to recall Botashev to the army, however the reason Botashev was called, was completely different. Experienced Major General Kanamat Botashev, who has a huge influence within the Russian army, was one of the commanders who was brought up with the tradition of the Red Army. However, Botashev, who had been critical of Putin's administration in 2013, was forced into retirement by Putin himself for certain excuses. Immediately after this incident, which was one of the biggest examples of Putin's repressive and authoritarian rule over the army, many Russian generals, such as Botashev, were purged from the army. The irrational decisions of Putin, who dismissed many senior and experienced Russian commanders for fear that these generals would attempt a coup, have incredibly increased the management crisis in the Russian army. Putin, who announced the invasion of Ukraine at a time when there were so many problems within the military, realized his mistake when it was too late for everything. As a result of the wrong moves of the new Russian commanders, most of whom were recruits, the Ukrainian army seized a huge opportunity. The Ukrainian army, which has been giving the Russian forces a nightmare with ground operations for months, has now started to organize very large-scale air operations. The Ukrainian army, which has carried out another similar operation in recent weeks, managed to deal a very big blow to the Russian Air Force. However, the details revealed after the operation caused a huge echo all over the world. According to intelligence transmitted to the Ukrainian intelligence service through unidentified persons, a Russian Su-25 fighter jet was due to transport a high-ranking general to the Donbass region in the near future. Despite trying to reach the source of this intelligence, Ukrainian intelligence officials who did not receive any response reported the situation to the commanders just in case. On top of this, the Ukrainian army, which immediately shipped U.S.-made long-range Patriot missiles to the Donbass region, launched a large-scale search in the region to assess the possibility of a Russian warplane passing by. Ukrainian soldiers, who were about to withdraw from Donbass due to the fact that the Russian warplane was not in sight for a long time, saw the Su-25 fighter jet entering the Donbass airspace just at this time. During the attack launched by Ukrainian soldiers deploying Patriot missiles, missiles fired decently repeatedly hit the Russian warplane within seconds. As a result of the shots, it was revealed that Major General Kanamat Bodashev was neutralized during the examinations conducted on the wreckage of the Russian warplane, which crashed directly to the ground. But everything got confused when it turned out who provided the Ukrainian intelligence with the date and route of the fighter plane Bodashev was on. During the work of the Ukrainian intelligence service, it was found that information about the plane carrying Bodashev was transmitted from Kremlin-affiliated sources. These developments, which show how big problems Putin's paranoid administration can cause, have fallen like a bomb on the agenda of the whole world. Recently, in similar ways, many Russian generals have begun to be sent to regions where there are hot conflicts, citing specific reasons. The fact that these Russian generals, who are normally expected to be in command centers behind the front lines, were seen on Ukrainian soil one by one was part of Putin's diabolical plan. Putin, who has been trying to eliminate all the names in the Russian army that are considered to be prone to rebellion since the first day he took office, aimed to build a huge empire of power in this way. But all Putin's dreams began to be disrupted one by the problems that arose during the Ukrainian war. Having completely lost the trust of both the Russian army and the Russian people, many attempts to shake Putin's throne have caused the crisis in Russian domestic politics to grow even more. The coup attempt launched by the Wagner mercenary group last June was one of these developments. Although the coup attempt of the Wagner army, which captured many critical regions of Russia, in a short period of time ended in failure, it proved to the whole world how much the reaction against Putin has grown. In addition, the anti-war and anti-Putin protests launched by the Russian people repeatedly have deconstructed the Russian leader's authority. Russian citizens, who are very uncomfortable with the rising inflation as a result of the sanctions imposed by the United States and other Western countries, have recently become very angry with the Ukrainian army's start to conduct cross-border operations. The anti-Putin slogans of thousands of Russian citizens who feel that Putin has failed to ensure border security and perform his duty properly echoed in many regions, including the capital Moscow and St. Petersburg. But what Putin was most afraid of was a large-scale coup attempt launched by the Russian military. Aware of the recent crisis between the administration and the military, Putin could completely lose the authoritarian regime he has been trying to establish for years if the Russian armed forces revolt. Dec. However, political experts made a very critical comment about Putin, who began to make much bigger mistakes while trying to prevent it. If this goes on, the statements of political experts who claim that it is extremely possible for Putin, who has lost the war, to lose his throne after the war, have become a ray of hope for thousands of Russian citizens who are counting down the days for a democratic and innovative Russia.